In looking through the bios and trying to craft a thread that might run through everything and let us have an interesting conversation, and we'll depart from it, I'm certain, but I'd like to focus on the word immersive. You get to decide what that word means. We might be using it to talk about a technology stance. We might be using it to talk about physical environments. We might be using it to talk about experiences that are either real, manifest physical experiences that can be witnessed unaided, or they may be equivalents or analogous experiences that are entirely virtualized. The point is, I want us to think about immersivity just as a general proposition, as the sort of the banner on top of this. And also, given the focus of the panel, let's think about that particularly as relates to live sound and the performance of music in a space for an audience. I think it's better understood, at least in these early days, what immersivity maybe means for a person wearing binaural headphones, or in a home theater or a cinema kind of environment. I think that framework is well understood. And I think, notwithstanding things like the Las Vegas Sphere, the notion of immersivity writ large for large-scale public events is less well understood and less well explored. And must immersivity involve multiple dimensions? Does it necessarily need to have both depth and height in order to qualify as immersivity? Right, so that's the end of my preamble. Rob, I'm going to start with you. And I'm going to start with you, frankly, for the most important of reasons, and that is, this doesn't come out of a vacuum. We build on top of what was before. So you've got a long and storied career of making the impossible possible for artists, your clients, and live audiences. Give me a sense about where your head is at about whether or not we're ready for some big seismic shift, or do you think, look, everyone's just hanging on by their fingernails anyways? I mean, just as a general idea, give me a sense of where you think we are.
Well, as a general idea, coming from the audiovisual world, where I'm providing equipment and technicians on job sites, we're just hanging on to what's going on right now, because the city's booming, it's growing fast. In the 40, 50 years I've been in this industry, the city's grown massively, and we're playing catch up all the time. But we have to think about what's coming next, and what's after next is an even more daunting topic. But we have to, as an audiovisual supplier, I have to be ready for what anyone asks for. I have to be able to help an artist or a performer develop how they're going to get from A to B. They'll come to me with an idea, and I've got to be able to make it work. And I've got to convince someone with a budget that they need to spend money to make this reality, that it's something that's worth accommodating.
Okay, so that's a sort of a very pragmatic, like, oh, what, you want to rent a what? Like, hold on, I've never even heard of that. Hold on, let me go look up what that thing is. But your point is super well taken, and I think that makes me think of the last panel, this idea that all of this IP stuff is best suited for situations where you can take a long time to plan it and put it in the walls and think about it and play, because it's a standing facility. It's going to be there forever. If it takes us a while to figure it out, it's great. We're going to reap the rewards over the long term. But the tactical environment, the rolling up with a truck for a set shoot strike day, or a concert that's in and out in the same 24-hour period, those are environments where you can't afford science projects. Oh
yeah, sure. Like, my carpenter building a new kitchen for me, he might take a couple days off and it's going to be finished next week. Well, as in the event business or the concert business, the audience has bought tickets. They're going to show up. The doors are going to open. We have to have our ducks in a row before we arrive, but I'm talking about the pre-production to get us there, even to the next level, to deal with the immersive. We're doing a huge amount of immersive projection and audio-visual areas, and trying to help audio, because people understand the visual aspect of immersive, but they don't get that audio is equally or more important than visual, because it's audio that psychoacoustically drags you around an exhibit. It tells you where to look, and we can't do an exhibit with 2 speakers. We need to have multi-channel sound, but I'm really talking about what's going on right now rather than what we're thinking about in the future, and that's why these guys are great. We've had some conversations in a green room before about connectivity and what we need from people to be able to operate things, and where we're getting the content from, who's creating it, how we're supporting the content creators.
Yeah. It's almost like we planned this talk. That's you couldn't have set that up even any better. Thanks, Rob. So, okay, so now I want to move, Justin, please. And I'm going to try and tell a story through this. But, okay, so let's build off what Rob just said. Talk to me about the creative conceit that's necessary to sell an artist or a creator on this idea that they should embrace without fear, departing from a channel 1 is left and channel 2 is right, and music must be stereo, yep. And we live in a 2-channel universe, and everything else is just pixie dust. Tell me about the creative and artistic conceit that starts a journey for you.
Absolutely. So it really does come down to understanding and educating a little bit on artistic intent. And so when we think about a song, typically we think about listening to music. We don't even have to say that we're thinking about listening to 2-channel audio. Composers, when they write a piece of music, unless otherwise defined, probably means that they've thought about it in some sort of presentation that is in stereo, even if it's just at their creative level. They're not thinking, oh, I'm going to play this back on 2 speakers, but unless otherwise defined, it is the de facto. It is just music. We don't say, hey, do you want to go listen to a stereophonic record anymore? We say, do you want to listen to a record? That means, by default, 2 channels. So at the base level, at an artistic level, it's actually just a lack of understanding of the potential that needs to first change. Now, just because it can change doesn't make it valid, doesn't make it better or worse. It's not a question of that. It's just that it is there. And this technology has been around for a long time, all the way back to, there are even other examples, but a great one that I like to think about is Fantasound and Disney. And, you know, when we get to Fantasia, Walt Disney installed quad systems in movie theaters, and something like, I don't know if the number's correct, but something like 80 movie theaters across the United States for a tour to be able to play Fantasia the way that he had intended it to be played for people. That's a long time ago. And that's a creator saying, this is how I want people to experience it.
Oh yeah, flat surround sound was 75 years to an overnight success.
Yeah, 75 years, exactly. So the concept has been there. It has never stopped. I mean, since that time, I mean, electroacoustic artists have done amazing things on stage far before where we are today. The challenge has been creating ecosystems where the creative mind can seamlessly meet a venue and meet a mixer and meet a technological environment that allows it to be realized without pre-production timelines and budgets that are completely unreasonable. So it's sort of held people back from crossing that threshold, and also to experiencing it. So to come back to your question specifically is, when I get a chance to work with an artist, they've, let's say, finished their song. Again, it's a stereo file. The first thing that needs to happen is I just need to sit with them and show them the potential. And usually, that opportunity is received very well if it's done with musical intent. I'm not trying to impress anyone. It's not really what it's about. It's like, look what happens when the canvas expands. More than 9 times, like on almost every time, if it's done properly or done musically, the artist is like, yeah, I'm in. This is an unbelievable experience. I love hearing my music this way. So that's step one. Step one is, okay, well, we can do this today. We can finish your mix and we can now deliver it. And one of these various technologies, we'll keep technology, the containers out of it for now. The question becomes really, though, does that artist go home? Did that have an impact to the degree that now they go and create with that in mind? So that whether they're coming for a mix or they're going and renting a system or creating a live event, like, is it at that level? And I think that it's not there yet. It certainly is still a niche that kind of immersive thinking is there, but it is happening. And we do see it in these unbelievable productions across the world. And it's just a matter of time, I think.
Yeah, and I think I would just to inject a personal opinion on that point, Justin, I think we haven't even begun to see the real magic.
Yes.
And the reason for that isn't technological. It's that the first generation of spatial native composers are growing up now, learning to listen to music in a spatial form.
Yes.
That wasn't just upmixed with a black box and turned into this smear of pap around the room to make the blue light go on the receiver and make people feel like they got value for their money at Best Buy when they bought their home theater in a box. But music that's really been made to experience, and so as kids who are today growing up learning this and learning to flex their musical and creative muscles, they're doing that in an environment where this is knowable. It's native. It's so. Using that as a jumping off point, because we're talking about kids, Finlay, and I'm going to come back to you at the end, but I want to know just an interjection here from the perspective of an educator, where a semester is still only 14 weeks long. It's not getting any longer. They're not adding years onto undergrad degrees or diploma. Like, in the finite amount of time that you have for students in this facility, where does your mind go when you realize the number of things we have to teach them that need to be built on top of a foundation that we still have the same amount of time to teach them in? Like, where does that leave you as an educator?
Yeah, I mean, we still start in stereo, right? Our foundational classes start with that flat canvas, right? And we spend most of our time trying to create 3D spatial realizations on that somewhat two-dimensional canvas. We try to get separation, but also depth. We try to get a sense of space for these diegetic worlds in our dramatic work, but also in our musical work. And as our students progress, immersive audio is an advanced topic. And the interesting thing that happens is they take all of that knowledge they've used in creating these diegetic story worlds in stereo and they apply it in immersive. But as the tools become more advanced, the practice becomes easier. Because at the end, at their end game, they're working in a game engine. And if they want something to sound like it's in front of them with height, maybe behind something or in a reverberant room, all they need to do is place it there. And it voices as if it is. As opposed to when we're working in stereo, it's okay, well, let's voice it, let's pan it, let's add reverb, let's balance the reverb between all the voices. Let's try to cram this three-dimensional world onto this flat canvas. There's a lot that goes into that. So I'm looking forward to the day where we start them in spatial. The technology is there, but the workflows aren't. To essentially have them hit the ground running in their first, in my first audio production, in a spatial context. And I think you're right. I think the future generations will have a different starting position, a different starting blocks in terms of how they'll engage with spatial immersive audio. And I'm looking forward to it because the work we do in game engines, the work we do in ambisonics, the work we do in Atmos, even this is a lot of fun to create that depth, to create that kind of positionality, to create that overall immersive experience that in some ways is more rewarding on the output, but also kind of easier to achieve with the tools that you see developed across the industry. So.
And yet all of those tools are themselves metaphors for pre-existing, material tools and processes, and the I don't know, the gap that I've often identified in my years as a teacher as well and trainer is that unless a new person in the industry, unless their education included enough experience with those original archetypes, they don't understand what they're looking at. There's no way for them to understand what Pro Tools is an analog of.
Yes.
Now, admittedly, we're not going to have to get too far in the future before that analog breaks. The old paradigm sort of goes away. But my concern right at the moment is that those self-same students who are starting out their two-channel, their journey, their media journey in two-channel, they're also learning, they're being taught encoded bad habits. They're being taught workflow and bad habits, it's my word, not yours, that is going to make, in some cases, it difficult to modernize. Because channel-based thinking is a philosophy, and it leads you in a very specific path that is mutually exclusive with, you know, some future thinking. Anyways, thank you, Finlay. I'm going to come back to you about education at the end, but I want to jump to this end of the couch, please, and Brandon.
Hi there.
Hi. It's a continuation of the same thought. Because not only is the amount of, the number of things that we need to teach, for instance, a new student, going up exponentially, but the number of things that any working practitioner, and Rob started the story by saying, like, hey, we're just hanging on with fingernails. So now, if somebody swings by the contact booth here, they'll see my favorite two-channel or 2RU piece of gear on the planet. It's called the Prodigy. And particularly the MX is the variant that I'm in love with, and I won't do a TED event without one anymore because it solves so many of my problems. But there is a ferocious, nearly hideous amount of complexity baked into a 2U box with a little tiny screen that doesn't really help, that really can't be leveraged unless you use somebody else's software, and it's still a lot to learn. As someone who's trying to sell all of this stuff into an increasingly dense, complicated marketplace, what are you hopeful about? Because it's ultimately the technology that powers the immersivity. That's why we're talking about this. We can talk about all the loudspeakers and vectors, but if we can't connect the stuff together, we're done for. And in a world where we have 1,000 species and different formats and sample rates and clocks, that's why your box is, that direct out box is so special. So tell me about what you were hopeful for or worried about, you know, either side of the same coin.
So if someone is experienced in the industry and they've, you know, had to plug more than 2 things in together at any one time and try to make it go, then they've hit some hurdles, and hopefully the solutions that we provide them and can steer them in the right direction answer questions that they've had that have, you know, maybe shot them in the foot. Maybe they spent hours trying to get over it, and, you know, this is a solution that they can, you know, pick to, you know, save those hours down the road next time. If you're new to the industry or new to creation or, you know, live production or whatever it may be, maybe you've read some articles and you know 1 or 2 words from my what could be a 2-hour phone call or Zoom session where I take you through many layers of, you know, pages and software and different things. And yeah, hopefully there are some words and, you know, phrases and things that as I say them, they set a light bulb off in your head. And, you know, then the conversation gets thicker as you start talking about networking or adding in, you know, interfacing with other people's technology, interfacing with, you know, word clock or sample rates or, you know, network switches or any of these things. So part of it, I think, is you have to have a completely open mind and take notes as you're learning about the technology, so that if someone says something, it just doesn't go in one ear and out the other, and that if you don't know what something is or what something does, you ask the question, and yeah, you dig in more, you learn about it, you figure it out, you know, read an owner's manual, whether or not the product doesn't exist anymore or not, and try to, you know, get some of that history. And Yeah, I think I remember, way back when I started out here and I met you for the first time at CTV, there was a steep learning curve that I jumped into. And yeah, a lot of, you would say something, and even if I took one or two good takeaways away from whatever conversation that I had, and it's like, oh, he mentioned this. What did that mean? And 4 hours of my life later and many deep dives, then every time I got smarter. So you kind of have to continually keep learning.
Yeah, and unfortunately, as we all know, we have to design our systems and our shows and our businesses around not always being able to guarantee that we're surrounded by people who are committed to continually getting smarter. I mean, the problem with designing something to be completely foolproof is underestimating the ingenuity of complete fools.
The guys at Prodigy up at night thinking about the next thing. That's what I'm wondering. Like, that's an incredible piece of technology.
We didn't meet. Jeremiah. Okay, my next question's for you, but since we hadn't met ahead of time, I was going to say, the guy over there with the...
I've been stuck in the spatial room.
No, that's a great place to be stuck, and that's a great sounding room down there. So, okay, let's see if I can bring this back around to loudspeakers. Because, of course I can. Why not? Even if they're strapped on the side of your head, they're still loudspeakers. Until someone comes up with a really good, practical, full duplex brain-computer interface, if we want to enjoy recorded sound, we're going to need loudspeakers. And I think someone whose specialty is actually compelling sound to move in an organized fashion, converting electricity into heat and sound. What does immersivity mean to you?
This is my favorite topic. Immersive is nothing to do with audio. That's my statement. I'll stick to that. So I did a presentation on a spatial audio. Okay, so that's the term. Spatial audio is what we're talking about because it is moving objects around in space. I gave a talk at Infocom 2 years ago about introducing our spatial engine because the market is now starting to become saturated with other products. About what immersive is, and the fact of the matter is that a lot of you older guys, no offense, have had some great immersive experiences on some mono PAs. And it's nothing about the loudspeakers setup or format. It's about being able to enjoy music, and you remove the boundary, and it has to be accessible. So as a loudspeaker manufacturer, I mean, the first accusation we get is we're in this to sell more speakers, and yeah, sure, why not? I mean, business is business. But we're about providing solutions that are easy to use, sound good, and do what's expected of them. So it's which is why we use the term spatial audio as opposed to immersive, because again, there's so many different ways of slicing spatial audio. A lot of people are talking about recorded sound. We're talking about live environments. We're talking about, Rob. I'm an ex-colleague of Rob. Actually, he's my old boss. My previous boss. It's all about making sure that when people pay that concert ticket, they're getting something out of it. And that's probably been the one thing that's been the biggest hurdle for spatial audio and immersive environments is the budgets typically go to lighting and video.
Yeah,
Because
agreed.
that's where it goes. Audio is always a second thought because you've been doing stereo for long enough, it's always worked. And people right there have gate-kept the whole live sound spatial audio market because it doesn't have to be hundreds and hundreds of speakers. You can do a spatial audio setup with a minimum of 3, right? You just need to be able to get the trajectories between the 3 sources, and the audience has to be covered by those 3. I mean, I talk a lot about extended stereo, and it's more about leveraging the technology that's available, the fact that everything is now software driven. There is not I don't think anyone has touched an analog console out of necessity for a long period of time.
Except for tracking, yeah. Right. Nobody's mixing on that.
And even then, you look at how tracking is happening. A lot of it is happening in RACU, inputs. It's not about analog audio. So the next generation, it's all software. The engines are all software. Everything is ones and zeros now. So it's creating environments and tools that are easy to use. So again, extended stereo, we now have processing engines that communicate with multiple different things through excellent tools like the Direct Out Prodigy or consoles or even the devices themselves. And now it's an onus on the manufacturers to get the software right, to make it so when someone opens the piece of software, they go, oh, I know what that is. I know that that's a fader. I know that that's a button. We're all pretty good at figuring that stuff out and being able to lay it out in that kind of world. As long as it's easy to use and accessible, then people will use it. That's been the biggest thing.
Okay, let me ask you one more question before I go on. I'll put you on the spot. What's blocking the loudspeaker industry? Just the whole notion of building loudspeakers for public use, for PA use. What's stopping sound systems from getting to the next level? I mean, they're already shockingly good. They're distressingly good.
There isn't a loudspeaker manufacturer on the planet that doesn't make a good sounding loudspeaker.
Right. So what, just generically speaking, what are we waiting for? Are we waiting for new material science? What are we waiting for as a community to get loudspeakers to the next plateau?
Okay, I'm having these parallel conversations because I had the same thing with someone maybe 15, 20 minutes ago. The thing that blocks us is people's mindset, first and foremost. They pigeonhole where the technology should go before experiencing it, or they say, the typical one I get is, oh, immersive audio, I've already lost my attention span. Immersive audio is only really good in fixed installation environments. Well, that's completely wrong. Because the technology is there for loudspeakers to go up and down incredibly fast. The biggest thing that we get on the touring aspect of things is, oh, well, if we're going to hang 5 arrays, well, that's 3 more than we normally do, which is also bullshit. It's only 1 or 2 more, but it's not that much work. We had a tour around France that was an orchestra with 5 arrays plus outfills. And our immersive specialist was there and he said, is it much more work? And the guy's like, no. For the first time ever, I get my own truss that does the full span of the front. Because we're doing spatial audio and I have more arrays, I can go to a lighter, smaller product because I still get the same headroom. I'm not hindered by lighting or video because it's all on its own truss. It goes up just as quickly. And he was out of the way. And the benefits for that were unparalleled. You get an orchestra with a screen. Every seat in the house is covered. There's no masking or anything. So the user experience is like unparalleled whether the user knows it or not. The third thing, or the last thing that is the biggest hindrance for spatial audio in the live field is the production designers. And audio is an afterthought, which is ironic because without the audio, you don't go home humming the light show. If you go to see a concert, you don't want to see the light show. You want to hear it. So why not give the performers the benefit of the doubt of having better technology? So what I see, and this is stereo, mono, spatial, no matter what, right now, our industry is being designed by lighting people. And they don't give a flying F about what we do because it's always worked. So why would they change it? But then you watch them layering new technology into their world and taking all of the pie, and it's not being redistributed between all of the different, departments. So, and again, even with stereo, I've got a hip-hop tour on the road, and there was no room for speakers. 120 dB expected local coverage for the entire arena, and the whole arena floor was lighting grid. And minimum trim 60 feet from the ground. Low trim.
Oh, good. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good
everything you
luck
want.
Then.
Yeah. But we make it work. The problem is that we also make it work, so then we've set the expectation on ourselves rather low.
Yeah, but it's so hardwired into us to not fail, right? It's funny, business culture presently as this, it's part of agile and lean to to celebrate failure, like fail fast, because that's how you improve, which is absolute horseshit. Pardon my French, because, in live production, you're not permitted to fail. Failure is not an option. In fact, the hideous complexity of the live environment is exclusively because you're not allowed to fail. So that's fine. It's great if you work in an edit suite and you've got an all stop button and an undo, you can iterate super quickly and you can learn to master or at least be super efficient or with these new techniques. In the live environment, you're kind of hooped because you really can't practice. You can only do it when it's happening, and then you have to be safe first because you have to you have to have a clean show, right?
We all plan backup plans and backup plans and backup plans.
Right, which is where the prodigy comes in again. Okay, so Justin. If you bring an artist into your magical audio cave, and you give them the hard sell, right? You go, "Hey, that was a great song. Hey, have you heard any of this immersive stuff? You ever heard Atmos? And you show them what's possible. Rah! I'm with you. You don't lose many of those pitches. I've done hundreds of them myself. But every so often you get someone who goes, eh. Like, for instance, one year I said, hey, producer pal, are we going to produce this year's show in 5.1? Because last year we did it in stereo. And he said, no, we're not going to do that. So he came into my room, we mixed it in stereo, we listened to it in stereo. He signed off on the mix, and on Monday morning, we're standing in line at the cafeteria getting coffee, and he said, hey, I said we were just going to do this in stereo. I said, yeah, we did do it in stereo. You listened to the mix on Friday in my room, you clown. Like, what are you talking about? He says, well, the show aired on Sunday night, and I was watching it at home with the wife, and it was in 5.1. It was magic. No, you were listening to an up mixer. You listened to the original. You just heard something that wasn't what you signed off on as the artist on Sunday night. Yeah. Like, no. If you love the surround, next year, can we do it real in 5.1 for real? Because then it would be so much better. He was like, no, that sounded great last night. That's good. We'll just keep doing that. Okay, so if you get a no, leave the artistic aside because you've made your shot and you missed. Right. They didn't buy the artistic thing. What else do you bring to the table? How do you convince them that it's worthwhile creating their next whatever it is in some next gen format?
Again, almost like we organized this. As I was listening to Jeremiah and what he was saying, and also I was just downstairs prior to this listening to a little bit of music on the Adamson system. I don't really see myself as an engineer in maybe this is a bad business practice, but I don't see myself as, my responsibility is not to convince somebody of anything. I think at the end of the day, if I played it for them and it spoke to them, it spoke to them. And 99% of the time I think it does. I do my best to make those musical experiences. If it didn't hit, and I was in a position where I felt like still playing something, not for necessarily, maybe for the future, I would then go and I would play something that was meant for it.
Right, yeah, okay.
And in that case,
sure.
I'm actually, here at AES specifically, I can sort of speak very honestly about something that I'm doing right now because I'm an engineer and an educator, but my background is as an artist. And I'm in the middle right now of releasing a project that I composed and created specifically for spatial audio. I'm down with, I agree. But as an immersive experience. And it's sort of a personal science experiment. I don't really share that out there. It's not something that people like to hear from artists, but it really is, in the sense that it's why I got into working in surround formats in the beginning, is just wanting to make my own music. Yeah. And what I have found is that when I sit down and I just play them my own music, I have a lot of it. The one I'm releasing now is what I'm releasing, but I've been working on it for a long time. That's usually one where they just sit down and say, well, yeah, this makes sense. And it makes sense because it's what it is.
It was designed for the right fit for purpose.
It is the music. Just the same as I was saying earlier that the music is stereo or the music is mono. We actually can't really separate technology from music and like reproduced music, right? Like, as you said, for now, it's a loudspeaker. You want to experience a recorded song, a loudspeaker of sorts is going to be involved. We can never really truly separate it. And so what happens is I usually play them something along those lines.
Right.
And then, again, what they do with that information is up to them. Whether they're like, well, actually, maybe we should revisit my song. Maybe, maybe not. But if it sparks an idea down the road, now you've got someone coming back and saying, yeah, that really hit me. And this time when I was tracking, I thought about this. Or could this happen? It's still not happening often enough that it's coming early enough in the process, because we just fall into our systems.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's okay. The systems are making great music. But as those systems expand, they expand because you've got an engineer who's been educated, who understands it at the source. It expands because there's a producer who understands the technology, who can shepherd an artist through. It expands because an artist grew up listened to it first, their first musical experience. Science experiment number 2, my children. They're 5 and 8 right now, and they've been the first thing that I play for them in immersive all the time. They don't know any better. That's just what they're listening to. I'll report back. There's some other things that hopefully I'm doing that are slightly more important, but so all of these things are going to take time. It does take time. But something that I'm experiencing, again, my own sort of personal science experiment as an artist right now, is when I went downstairs and I saw Jeremiah presenting, which you should all go downstairs, check out the Adamson room, I saw the solution to a problem that I found a solution for 2 weeks ago at the TD Music Hall here in Toronto. So I made this music to play back for people in multi-channel systems. That's how I want to share it. Does it sound great in binaural? Does it translate to someone's laptop and phone? Sure, that's what Atmos can do, and I'm good at doing that, so therefore it succeeds. But what I really want is for us to experience it in the kind of room that's downstairs or larger, as a cinematic kind of experience. Mm-hmm. That's the intent. Again, it's not for better or worse, it's just that's what I wanted to make, and so I made it. And the TD Music Hall has a 38 speaker system. I went in there, I did a bespoke mix for the room. We had 200 people in the room, and we played it back, and it was a wonderful experience. Like you said, the audience came and got something out of it that was meaningful, that was sound first. Now, that's because I came in as the artist and said, this is sound first. If that starts to happen, then the lighting people have to step aside. Like if the producer is coming in saying, this is what I want, they're like, oh yeah, but what about how many lights can we go? Yeah, but where are the speakers? Oh, we don't have room for those. Psh, psh. So it really has to come down. And I'm not trying to get in competition with lighting folks here. I'm just saying.
Why not?
I'll probably lose. It sounds like I'd lose. Sounds like I'd lose. Yeah, there's no lighting. Okay, so
hey, if it wasn't for lighting guys, we could never see who's singing.
So I walk downstairs and Jeremiah makes it look as easy as the technology. Here's the system. You set it up, yesterday, this morning?
Yesterday.
You set it up yesterday. It's brilliant. It sounds great. It's immediately, quite appropriately designed for the room. The first thing I said to him, not as just an engineer, as an artist, is what parts of the city have this? I would go tomorrow and invite people to listen in that system right now.
Yeah.
I have music that I would do it. And you know who else would? The thousands and thousands of artists who now have Atmos mixes. I've been honored to be a part of a lot of them.
Don't get a chance to hear them.
And don't get a chance to share it with their audience.
Communally listen to it.
Again, back to the science experiment, I just got to be at the TD Music Hall and present to an audience as the artist this time, and the engineer, but to 200 people who shared that experience. And it was fulfilling. And I want to do it again. So fast forward that to all of the potential content creators, all the people who have all of this multi-channel music that's largely being experienced in headphones. There's a lot of really good mixed content out there.
There is.
And if they could have their audience sit in a room like this and experience it that way, they would do it. They just need to know that it's possible. They just need to know that they need the jump off point. They need to know that when they call Rob, they can be like, well, I want to rent that system or like this system because I have produced my music this way. The hardest part of content is that there's actually already quite a large plethora of it.
Yeah.
Anyways, hopefully that answers the question a bit.
100%. Finlay, just before we go to Q&A, I wanted to close with you because, and Justin, because you're an educator too, so feel free to chime in. But can we do this? Can we? Do you think? Given how long, and let's pretend for a moment we're not sitting in a university and just speak abstractly about what higher education in the here and now is. can the education institution writ large adapt fast enough, given that we in the industry and in the companies that are responsible for creating whatever this future is, we don't even know where we're going. So when that's the case, you can't know as educators, not with any particular granularity, until there's some concreteness in the world. So my question is just, 2-minute answer. Can we do it? Can we do it without also needing to blow up what a 4-year education looks like? Meaning, can we fit it all in, do you think?
Yeah, and I mean, that's becoming easier. One thing you touched on earlier, Michael, was talking about how the tools that we use are still based on, tape machines. They're still based on, the legacy of mechanical and analog equipment, which is I have a love for. But the tools are available now for our students to create their own tools, to create their own workflows, their own methods. Seeing Jeremiah yesterday, just seeing how your Fletcher machine is built off of Hollyhock, which is a development environment, essentially a modular DAW where you can build your own audio system for whatever need you might specifically have. And so, here, as an institution, we're kind of playing the end user game. We're like, yes, we use Pro Tools, and we're training our students on Pro Tools, and we use, perhaps Logic for this, or Ableton for this, or this particular software for this particular application. We're trying to move beyond that and say, well, what kind of applications, what kind of bespoke tools can we create using Touch Designer or Hollyhock? You don't need to have an advanced degree in engineering anymore to build your own applications, to essentially build your own tools. And that's where a lot of us came from. If you think of the classic example of the first large PA system, someone just kind of experimented and put a bunch of speakers together and let's try it out. Ooh, it didn't work. I look forward to that mutation. I look forward to us experimenting and, yes, using the professionally polished tools, but also seeing the next generation, just as the previous generation, let's make my own compressor, let's make my own EQ, let's have our current students make their own spatial audio tools and push the format in interesting directions. I love Atmos, but I love seeing the work with your own spatial engine. It's just something different, right? It's a different way of approaching spatial audio. And if we can encourage our students to see themselves involved, not just in the process of content creation, but also the tools that inform that, I think we'll have a whole new generation of people that think differently and will create content that will have us bamboozled to a certain degree. Yeah, and that's my hope, is to one to be like, what are those kids doing? I don't fully understand. I like the energy and enthusiasm, but I'm not fully engaged with it, and that for me excites me in the future.
Nobody enjoys a good bamboozling like me. So thank you for the word of the panel, Finlay. Questions? 2 microphones, one in either aisle, if anyone would like to ask a question of any of our panelists. Oh, there he is, Wayne. There we go. Question number 1. Off to you.
I couldn't shut up about this one. This topic is near and dear to my heart. I've known Michael for a while. I do broadcast music mixing, but I'm also an educator in Ottawa, Algonquin College. And I've been the one at the college to really push immersive. And one thing that I've come across is some of my colleagues, we're all teachers, we're supposed to be helping the new generation look forward. Some of my colleagues are like, it's just a fad. We've been through this before, And I find it phenomenally frustrating to be talking to the students on one side saying, look at the creative aspects of this, while on the other side I've had colleagues who are like, I was whatever. And just maybe a question more so on how have you, particularly Justin, you're in the education field as well, and you as well. How have you handled the naysayers, if you will, from the educational perspective?
Invite them in and play them some music. That's where I start. And that's honestly what I did many times.
Yep.
And again, I think that if everyone's money and the commercial aspects of it are no joke, right?
Of course.
Adapting a facility, it takes money, accessibility. There's no question that since the beginning, even Walt Disney had to go and install the systems himself, right? They didn't exist.
Yeah.
So that takes time, and the economics of it are a constant barrier in our artistic intent sometimes. However, from an institutional standpoint, if you can, two recommendations. One is have them sit and listen to meaningful content. The second is remember that a lot of times, because I've been on discussions about this before, Atmos is just one tiny branch of this spatial world. Yeah. And so on this stage, we have, Rob's talking about it from an implementation and like a day-to-day, well, there's careers. Jeremiah's talking about it from this, and we're talking about it from an educational standpoint. We're talking about it from a software standpoint. It is everywhere. And in fact, music in Atmos, as shiny as it is and as loud as it is in terms of its current place in the industry, it's only just one fragment of it. And the more that I get a chance, the more that I've had a chance to be reminded about the live environment and all of the other places that it's being implemented, that was really helpful from a curricular standpoint, to remind them that actually this is somewhat of a responsibility pedagogically to prepare students for what the world is and is looking like.
That's more my direction that I've been going about.
So anyways, that would be my suggestion.
The only thing I would add is our students are really good in stereo as well, but they have the benefit of having worked in 3 dimensions, right? They've been sculpting with clay. They can see how the light reflects on it. They can change their perspective on it. If they need to distill that to a stereo canvas, they're really good at it as well. They benefit from that, being able to see beyond that and what could be, and then, instilling that into the 2-dimensional canvas.
Nice, thank you.
If you're talking about a sound for picture application too, it changes the discussion.
Yes.
Wildly, because the only defense really of the music equals 2-channel thought process that is stuck in some people's minds isn't really particularly defensible in a music-only or an audio-only environment, notwithstanding bringing someone into a controlled environment, playing them something that was designed for the purpose and just blowing their doors off. But when it comes to sound for picture, it's a completely different animal.
Sure.
Because you cannot argue that 2-channel stereo properly supports that picture. It just doesn't. Period. Full stop.
I'm going to jump in and say on the live world, we have the same instance.
Yes.
And I've got a slide that I can show you with a very, very quick explanation of like when you end up in the stereo field, how limiting it is and how inaccessible it is for 50% of the audience if you've got an engineer who pans it.
Yes.
But to your comment about, educators and people, saying it's just a fad, I can tell you from the manufacturer's perspective, it's not. I can tell you right now, my biggest competitor is paving the way for all of us to get into areas where we didn't think possible. Yeah. And it's not that their technology is any better or any worse than ours. We all have our own way of doing it. But, thankfully, they're the ones with the money to be able to pave that way. So if an educator were to come to me and say it's just a fad, I would say that's uneducated of you to say so and go and educate yourself just like that. If education is there to challenge one another, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because otherwise, if we don't challenge one another, the mousetrap example, if you don't get your fingers caught in the mousetrap, you don't know how the mousetrap works.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And creativity doesn't happen until the waveform gets distorted.
Thanks. And just one more little point. In terms of the live world, I'm not sure if anyone had a chance either over the pandemic or just after the pandemic. Mark Rieken did a fantastic job with Feist's Multitudes tour. And during the pandemic, it was indoor, fully immersive, fantastic. He took it on tour once things opened up. And sure, there was a little bit more work, but it worked. He toured with a fully immersive system. Sorry, I think he used Meyer boxes.
But they used to mix. They were using one manufacturer's loudspeaker, another manufacturer's processor, and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And I was trying to say, hey, we've got a processor that can do all of those things. But that's the thing. There's so many different, we're at critical mass. There's so many different flavors of software that can do it. Now it's up to the user to choose what works best for their environment.
And now it's starting to diversify too, because you have specific immersive or spatial audio things that are specific to, media creation. You have things that are specific to live sound. You have specific to concert sound, theaters, different things. So whereas before maybe there was only one flavor or two flavors of things, and
It's commercial distortion. The commercial distortion of what a technology is, like when people come in and say, oh, spatial or immersive audio, and the first word they throw, no offense, is Dolby and Atmos. And you have to explain to them that Atmos is a realization of the technology and it's just a container. And for me, when I was learning all this stuff, because again, we all learn. If we stop learning, we get bored. When I was learning, as soon as I came up with that realization of, oh, it's just a container, and really when you look in the container, all of these technologies are doing the same thing, I was able to move beyond that and understand that, you're right, there are tools for different environments, and that, people say stereo because stereophonic was a branding. It's all commercial.
And and yet Bell, those experiments more than 100 years ago now at Bell Laboratories proved, at least to their satisfaction, that of the 32 different formats and concepts they looked at, that the most stable stereophonic reproduction they were able to generate was with 3 channels, left, center, and right. And 3-channel stereo, and then it was immediately forgotten about it because of a physical constraint. There was no way to get it to the home.
Center channel.
The center. There's no way to get the center channel to the home. There was no way to, so we forgot about it for 100 years. Yeah, agreed. Any other questions? Anyone? No? Not even any plants? I should have planted some questions. Damn it. Let's see what's on the papers here. Yeah. Oh, well then, you have a microphone too, as it turns out. So you don't even have to stand up.
I guess I don't. You guys all realize that human evolution is now expectation-based. And what all of you are doing is you're changing our expectations. You're changing our expectations. Our creative nature is going to expand because of what you guys are doing. How does that make you feel personally, not as a representative of your company or your agency, but for you, living a human life as a person, a creative individual? Is there anything about this that frightens you about going forward? Justin?
No, not fear. I just think inspired. The way that you phrase it that way, I agree.
Okay.
I think that technology and art have always moved in tandem. Sometimes the technology is pushed, sometimes the art is pushed. I like to remind students, like, the piano is technology, the concert hall is technology, the violin is technology, instruments, my bass is a form of technology that then inspires an artist to explore, and then the artist just throws it, shows it what it's really capable of, right? So I do think that we are at this, or at least I entered into this at a time when the interest in spatially remixing music or creating music specifically, in a spatial environment is on a growing phase, and I love that idea. I think it's very inspiring. Mm-hmm. From a fear standpoint, I see nothing to fear here. We're not. The world is very volatile in many ways, but when it comes to what we're doing, I think it's a relatively safe parameters.
Our first panel that we had this morning, 2 hours ago, was focusing on worrying that the robots are coming to take away our jobs, and the whole AI emergence, if you will. And the one thing I always felt that any form of these heuristic, algorithmic processes will never, ever be able to touch is the soul of our human creativity. And it makes me really, really happy to hear all of you speak on this panel to the fact that as human beings, having a creative vision for where sound is going, live sound or playback, you guys are really very inspiring to me, in that you're holding our humanity's ownership of the art that we create. And right now, it feels like the world is in a state of helplessness, wondering about how it's going to go. So I just wanted to thank all of you and just say, yeah, I'm totally blown away.
We're a species completely defined by our mistakes, right?
I agree, Jeff.
And the fact of the matter is that, AI can't take our jobs because most of the advancements we make as a society come from mistakes, right? And if AI makes a mistake, it doesn't know if it's a good mistake or a bad mistake.
No, and we did talk about that in the first panel.
Still reliant on someone making a decision and someone prompting the decision to move forward.
I think we've always certainly through our relatively brief history of recorded sound. I think we've mostly proven ourselves to be very good opportunists. Right, we will produce to the maximum available at the moment, and some of us will dream of what's just over the horizon. But look, guys like Alan Parsons are very clear. If digital audio workstation technology and an undo button and virtually unlimited tracks just by hitting Control N, you can make a new track. If those technologies had existed back at the start of his career, the world would never have had a Pink Floyd record, because they'd still be in the studio trying to make them and arguing about whether they were finished. There was a certain consequence to embracing the outside of the tool, and you'd gone one too many generations, and if you went one more tape generation, nobody was, So now, when those old limits are gone, we are still opportunistic. I don't know that anybody on this panel would be fearful of needing to mix something, make a recording, to help a friend out with something, even with, pick the tools, doesn't matter. We'll try to depend on our abilities as professionals to create a result independent of the fact that we might today not have the very best tools. I think as creators, we take that same sort of concept. A painter can't paint with an image, with a hue that they can't create. Right. They either have that hue on their palette, or they know that they can combine colors together to create it, or they don't use it.
Or they're going to discover it.
And when they discover it, they figure out how to make it, or how to,
From a cognitive neuroscience background, which is a part of my elective studies, yes, biologically we're binaural hearing individuals, but our brains are adapting. And then when I say that expectation can drive our evolution, I do believe there is something changing in our brains in the way that we're processing because of these new experiences that you are giving us. We are changing.
I would actually argue to the fact that we've always listened in spatial audio. It's just now the technology's caught up to the way we listen to things.
So the way we experience the world as animals, yeah.
Yes.
Note for next year, let's have a panel on speciation.
Okay.
And
I'll have you moderate
and
it.
the eventual evolution of the species. Okay. We're just at minute 61, so I'm going to thank the panel very much for their willing cooperation, and thank you all for being here, and come back at 4:30 for the last panel.